Welcome to Reform Thinking.
It's great to be back.
I want to start today by talking about a very specific feeling, a feeling I think pretty much everyone listening has probably wrestled with, maybe even this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's that tension,
Mm.
that friction between trying to be good, doing all the right things, checking the moral boxes, and what the gospel actually calls us to. It can feel like such a heavy weight.
It really is the classic struggle, isn't it? And honestly, I think for a lot of people, it's the very reason they get burned out on Christianity.
Oh, for sure.
We start to see the Christian life as this huge, impossible list of demands we have to meet, and it just feels, well, it feels exhausting, like you're always falling short.
That's the word, exhausting. Feels like a debt you can never quite pay off. And that brings us right to our source material for this deep dive. We're opening up C.S. Lewis again.
Good.
Specifically, a chapter from Mere Christianity with the title, Is Christianity Hard or Easy?
Which is such a provocative title.
It is.
Because your first instinct is to say, well, it has to be one or the other. You want a straight answer so you can, brace yourself for whatever's coming.
Exactly. But Lewis, of course, does not give a straight answer.
No, he refuses to simplify it. He says the reality is much more complex.
So here's the hook, the question I want to pose to you and to everyone listening. Is the Christian life supposed to be this matter of difficult, grinding drudgery where we just grit our teeth and try to be better people? Or is it supposed to feel light and joyful? Lewis's argument is that it's actually both, and also neither, in a way that just completely contradicts our natural intuition.
And this text is so crucial because it gets right to the heart of the difference between what Lewis calls ordinary morality and the actual work of Christ.
Right.
This isn't about behavior modification. It's not self-help. It's not just, being a slightly nicer person. What we're talking about is a complete structural change of the human person. From our perspective, a reformed perspective, we'd call this regeneration. We'd call it sanctification.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Lewis starts by identifying where most of us begin our thinking. He calls it the ordinary idea of morality. What's a default setting for the human mind here?
The default setting is the ordinary self. That's the term he uses. Before we can really grasp the full Christian picture, we all start with our ordinary self right at the center of the universe.
Right. Me.
Exactly. Me. My desires, my interests, my personality, that's the baseline reality. This is my territory, my life.
And then morality shows up.
Yes. And we perceive morality or, the good of society or maybe God's law as this external thing, an outside force that makes claims on us.
It feels like an intrusion.
It does. It feels like it's interfering with the me. It's an intrusion on my autonomy.
It's like a stranger walking into your house and telling you what to do.
Oh.
And Lewis gives these really concrete examples. He says, okay, the ordinary self wants to do certain things. Maybe it's a bit of gossip or holding on to money or some kind of lustful thought.
Things that feel natural to that self?
Yes. But then morality steps in and says, nope, that's wrong, so you have to give it up. And it feels like you're losing something, like you're being robbed.
And the flip side is also true. There are things the self has absolutely no interest in doing, like, say, being charitable to someone you dislike or showing patience to a really difficult family member.
Yes.
But morality says, you must do this. It's the right thing. So we have to force ourselves. We end up constantly fighting against our own natural grain.
And this whole mindset leads to what Lewis calls the taxpayer analogy.
Yeah.
I absolutely love this image because it's so relatable.
It's incredibly vivid.
So he says, imagine an honest man paying his taxes. He does it. He follows the law. He writes the check. But what's going on in his head while he does it? What's his actual mindset?
His mindset is all about calculation. He's thinking, okay, I hope that after I pay the government what it demands, there will be enough left over for me to live on.
Yeah, for my real life.
Exactly. He sees his income as fundamentally his own, and the tax is just this necessary evil he has to deduct from it. He wants to pay the absolute minimum required to stay out of jail.
And then keep the rest for himself, for his own plans and his own enjoyment.
And that is precisely how we apply this to God.
Oh, it's a perfect parallel.
It is. The mindset is, okay, I have my life, which belongs to me, and I'll pay God or morality or whatever it's due. I'll give God his percentage.
Maybe it's 10% of my income, right? The tithes. Or a couple hours on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Or a certain amount of being nice that I have to dispense during the week.
Right. But the rest, the other 90%.
Yeah.
The other 6.5 days, that's mine. That's my private property to do with as I please.
We basically see God as a creditor.
Mm-hmm.
A cosmic IRS agent.
We do. We see ourselves as these independent operators just trying to keep a portion of our lives private, away from his influence. We just want to clear the debt so we can get back to our real business doing what we want.
And Lewis just cuts right through that and says it's a massive theological error.
It is, because it completely misunderstands our relationship to the Creator. You are not an independent contractor negotiating a deal with God. You're a creature. He made you. Every single breath you take is a gift from him. The ground you stand on is his.
So the whole idea of my life is flawed from the start.
It is, but even just on a practical level, Lewis says this taxpayer approach is a complete disaster. It just doesn't work.
He says it only ever leads to two possible outcomes, and neither of them is good. So what happens when you try to live this taxpayer life?
Okay, so the first outcome is that you just give up. You quit.
You default on the loan.
You do. You realize you can't pay the tax. The demands of conscience are just too high. The rules are too strict. So you just stop trying to be good altogether. You say, forget it. If I can't be perfect, I might as well just be a rebel and do what I want.
I think a lot of people end up there.
Yeah.
And the second outcome.
The second outcome is that you become unhappy. Not just a little unhappy. Incredibly, deeply unhappy.
This is the part that I find so interesting. Why? Why does trying to be good in this specific way, this taxpayer way, guarantee misery?
It's because of the way conscience works. Lewis argues that the more you obey your conscience, the more it actually demands of you.
Oh, it's not a fixed tax rate.
It's not a fixed rate at all. It's a progressive tax. So if you're operating from that ordinary self, that self is being constantly starved. It's being hampered and worried and nagged at every single turn.
So it just gets angrier and angrier.
Of course it does. It feels like it's being robbed of its life, its pleasures, its very identity. You're essentially dragging this ordinary self along, kicking and screaming, trying to force it to be holy, and it resents every single step.
And this is what produces the martyr complex.
Yes, the martyr. And we all know this person, or if we're honest, we've probably been this person at some point, the one who's always living for others, but does it with a deep theatrical sigh.
Oh, yes. The person who says, well, I guess I'll do the dishes again with this heavy tone. I do everything around here, nobody ever appreciates it.
They're always discontented. They're always keeping score, wondering why nobody sees how much they're sacrificing. They're making a public spectacle of their own supposed goodness.
And Lewis makes this incredibly sharp observation here. He says this person, this martyr, actually becomes a greater pest to everyone around them than if they just stayed frankly selfish.
That's a real sting in the tail, isn't it?
It is. The idea that honest, straightforward selfishness might actually be less socially damaging than this kind of self-righteous, unhappy goodness.
But it's true if you think about it. The frankly selfish person is at least enjoying themselves, and they're not trying to make you feel guilty about it. But the unhappy martyr, they spread gloom and guilt wherever they go.
It just highlights the total futility of the taxpayer model. You can't just suppress the natural self indefinitely and expect it not to turn toxic.
And it flies in the face of our own theology. The Westminster Shorter Catechism asks, what is the chief end of man? And the answer isn't to be miserable for God, it's to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. The martyr isn't enjoying God, they're enduring him.
Okay, so if the taxpayer model is the wrong way, the ordinary way that leads to ruin, what's the alternative? What is Christ actually asking for if it's not our taxes?
Christ's demand is total. It's not a percentage. It's all or nothing. Lewis summarizes the voice of Christ as saying something like, look, I don't want so much of your time and so much of your money and so much of your work. I want you.
I want you. That just changes the entire frame of reference, doesn't it? It's not a transaction anymore.
Not at all. And this is the critical point. Christ is not interested in tormenting the natural self. He's not trying to whip it into shape or discipline it into submission.
He wants to kill it.
He wants to kill it.
Lewis uses some really aggressive analogies here to make this point. He brings up dentistry and, well, nobody likes going to the dentist.
Right. And his point is, if you go to a dentist with a bad toothache, what you probably want is for them to just stop the pain. Maybe drill it a bit, put a crown on it, some maintenance work.
You want to keep the tooth. You just want it to stop hurting. You want relief, not surgery.
Exactly. But Christ is the kind of dentist who looks at the x-ray and says, no, I'm not going to drill it. I'm not going to crown it. I'm going to have it out.
He wants to pull the tooth, get rid of the source of the infection completely.
And he uses the tree analogy too, which is just as stark. Christ doesn't want to just prune a branch here or there to make the tree look a bit tidier.
He wants the whole tree down.
The whole tree down. He wants to clear the ground and start fresh.
If you really let that sink in, it's terrifying. It sounds so destructive.
It is destructive, but only to the old self. It's the demand for, as Lewis puts it, the whole outfit. We have to hand over the entire natural self. And notice the detail he includes here.
Not just the wicked desires.
Not just the wicked desires, but the innocent ones, too. Everything.
Okay, that's a sticking point for me. Why the innocent ones? I get handing over my anger or my greed. Those are obviously weeds in the garden. But why does my love for a hobby or my enjoyment of a simple comfort, why does that have to go on the chopping block, too?
Because if those things still belong to the natural self, they are still part of the old, corrupt structure. They're part of the taxpayer's little stash that he's trying to keep for himself.
So it's about lordship.
It's entirely about lordship. If you keep the nice parts of your life under your own control, you are still the god of that little domain. But, and this is the crucial turn in the whole argument, he doesn't just take, he offers an exchange.
I will give you a new self instead.
In fact, I will give you myself. And this resonates so deeply with the Reformed understanding of union with Christ. This is not self-improvement, it's self-replacement.
Galatians 2:20.
I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. It's his life, his will, his desires becoming ours. We don't just try to act like him, we begin to share in his very life.
So we move from this really terrifying demand of give me everything to this incredible promise of a new life. And this brings us right to the central paradox of the whole chapter. Is this path harder or is it easier?
Lewis argues it's both. And he starts by looking at Scripture, where you see this exact same paradox in the words of Jesus himself.
Right. On the one hand, Jesus says, take up your cross.
Which, as Lewis points out, implies death, a horrible death. He says it's like being beaten to death in a concentration camp. It's the ultimate difficulty. It is the end of you.
But then, almost in the next breath, Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
So how can both of those things be true? How can something be a cross, an instrument of torture and execution, and also be a light burden?
That's the riddle.
And Lewis resolved this by saying it all depends on how you approach the task. It's about the method you choose.
He uses the lazy boy analogy. This one really took me back to my school days.
It's a perfect illustration. Every teacher in the world has said this. The laziest boy always ends up doing the most work.
So let's picture it. You have two students, and they have to learn a geometry proposition. The hard worker sits down and puts in the effort to actually understand it.
Which takes work in the moment. It requires mental focus. It's probably a bit uncomfortable for 10-15 minutes.
But then you have the lazy boy. He doesn't want to do that mental heavy lifting of understanding the logic. He just tries to memorize the shape of the answer.
He's just parroting it, because for that specific moment, it feels like less effort. He's taking what he thinks is the shortcut.
But then what happens 6 months later, when the final exam comes around?
That's it. The boy who took the time to understand it, he just breezes through. He sees the logic, he gets it. He might even enjoy solving the problem because he grasps the underlying principle.
But the lazy boy.
He's now facing hours and hours of miserable, soul-crushing drudgery, trying to cram this disconnected information into his head. His initial laziness has resulted in far more work in the long run.
The shortcut was actually the long, hard way around.
And Lewis says this is exactly what happens in the spiritual life. He also uses this great analogy from battle or from mountain climbing to talk about courage.
The idea of pluck, as he calls it.
Right. In a dangerous situation, he says, the thing that requires the most courage, the thing that looks the hardest and scariest in the moment, is often actually the safest option.
So if you're climbing a mountain and you come to a tricky spot, and you funk it, you hesitate, you get scared, you try to take what looks like an easier, less steep path.
You often find yourself in a far more dangerous position a few hours later. You get stuck on a ledge you can't get down from, you run out of daylight.
The cowardly thing is also the most dangerous thing.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful line. It reminds me of, handling a powerful animal like a horse. If you're timid and fearful, you're actually more likely to get hurt.
That's a great example. So
Yeah.
applying this to our faith, total surrender to Christ feels terrible. It feels like jumping off a cliff. Lewis says it feels almost impossible.
But it's actually easier than the alternative.
It's infinitely easier than the alternative, which is what we were just talking about, the taxpayer model.
Right.
Trying to be good while remaining our old natural selves.
Lewis argues that this compromise is literally impossible.
It is. We are trying to keep our own personal happiness as the main goal, while also trying to be good. We want to let our mind and our heart go their own way, centered on money or pleasure or ambition or approval. and yet somehow, at the same time, behave honestly and humbly and charitably.
We want the fruit without changing the root.
And Christ himself warned us this can't be done. A thistle cannot produce figs. It's just an agricultural reality. You can't trick nature.
That's such a great way to put it. If I have a field that is nothing but grass, I can work really, really hard on it. I can cut the grass every day. I can keep it perfectly short, make it look like a pristine putting green.
But it's still grass.
It's still grass. It will never, ever produce a stalk of wheat.
Correct. And to get wheat, you can't just improve the grass. The ground must be, as Lewis says, plowed up and resown. The entire root system has to be ripped out and replaced with something new.
Which connects right back to the idea that the natural self must be replaced, not just improved.
Yes. Trying to force a grass field to act like a wheat field is an endless, exhausting, impossible labor. But being a wheat field that produces wheat, that's natural. That's easy in a sense. It grows out of the very nature of the plant.
So total surrender, allowing ourselves to be plowed up and become that wheat field, that is the easy yoke, even though the plowing itself is violent and painful.
Precisely. Being a Christian in the long run is easier than trying to be a good person without Christ. It's the difference between pretending to be something you're not and actually becoming it.
Now, this is all very theological.
Yeah.
It's high-level stuff. But Lewis, being Lewis, brings it right down to the most practical, mundane moment of our day, the moment your alarm clock goes off.
The daily practice, the battlefield of the morning.
I love this description. He talks about waking up. He says, the second you become conscious, all your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals.
Don't we all feel that? Before your feet even touch the floor. The anxieties, the I want this, the I need to do that, the plans, the fears, the self-preservation instinct, it all just hits you.
It's an assault. It's the natural self immediately trying to assert its dominance over the day.
Yes.
And Lewis says the very first job of every single day is simply shoving them all back.
It's an active, conscious act of defense. You have to push back those wild animals so that you can create a little bit of quiet space to listen to that other voice.
For the voice of Christ.
Yes. You have to intentionally take the other point of view. You have to let that larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in. You have to reorient yourself and remember who you belong to before the day swallows you up.
He describes it as standing back from all your natural fussings and frettings, coming in out of the wind. It sounds like a daily recalibration.
And he's realistic about it. He admits we can probably only do it for a few moments at first. It's not like you achieve some instant, permanent state of Zen. But he says that from those moments, the new life begins to spread.
It's like a good infection.
It is. It starts in those quiet, intentional moments in the morning, and then it starts to spread out and influence the rest of your day.
He distinguishes this kind of deep change from just a surface application.
Yeah.
Uses the analogy of paint versus dye.
Yes. The ordinary morality, the taxpayer model, that's like paint. You lay it on the surface of something, it covers the outside. It might look nice for a while, but underneath, the material is exactly the same as it was before.
And it can chip off, it can peel, it creates this hard shell that might just be hiding rot on the inside.
But the Christian life, the new life in Christ, is a dye.
It soaks right through.
It soaks right through. It changes the very color and composition of the fabric itself from the inside out. And Lewis is so emphatic here. He says Christ never talked in vague, idealistic gas. When Jesus said, be perfect, he meant it. He meant the full treatment.
He meant the dye soaking through every single fiber of our being.
Yes, because he intends to actually make us into creatures that can stand in the presence of a holy God without being consumed. It's not a metaphor. It's a real transformation.
And that leads us to what is maybe the most famous image in this whole chapter and possibly one of Lewis's best ever, the egg.
The egg and the bird, it's a masterpiece.
He says, we are like eggs at present.
And an egg is a perfectly fine thing to be. There's nothing inherently wrong with being an egg. It has its own integrity, its own purpose. But, and this is the whole point, you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary, decent egg.
You must hatch or you will go bad. That is the ultimatum. There is no permanent, stable status quo for an egg.
And this brings the whole hard versus easy paradox into perfect focus. It is hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It's a violent, scary, destructive process for the egg itself. The shell has to break. The egg must cease to be an egg.
But
it is impossible for an egg to learn to fly while it remains an egg.
I just love that image. You can just picture a little egg on the ground, straining, flapping imaginary wings, maybe cracking its shell a little bit from the effort. trying with all its might to be a bird without actually changing its fundamental nature.
And that is a perfect picture of us when we try to be good without surrendering to Christ. We're eggs trying to fly. We're ridiculous. We look foolish. We exhaust ourselves, and we just make a mess.
Lewis says we have to undergo the change of species.
We must be hatched. This is regeneration. This is what it means to be born again.
So we have this deep internal change, the dye soaking in, the egg hatching. But then Lewis does something fascinating. He zooms way out. He starts to look at the purpose of our major institutions. He talks about the state and the church, and this is where he really flips our usual priorities upside down.
It's a brilliant pivot. He just cuts through centuries of political philosophy in a very Lewis way. He asks us a very simple question. What is the state for? What is government actually there to do?
And his answer is so surprisingly humble. He says the state exists simply to promote and protect ordinary happiness.
He gives these incredibly cozy, mundane examples. A husband and wife chatting over the fire at the end of the day, a few friends playing darts in a pub, a man reading a book in his room or digging in his garden.
It's so grounded, so human.
It is. And then he makes this incredibly bold claim. He says all the big stuff, the laws, the parliaments, the armies, the courts, the police, the whole economic system, all of it is a complete waste of time unless it exists to support and protect those simple moments.
The grandeur of the state is just a servant to the ordinary happiness of its citizens.
Exactly. The state is the fence. The people and their simple joys are the garden inside. And the fence only has value for the sake of the garden.
So the state is just the scaffolding. But then he contrasts this with the church.
And the church, he says, is completely different. The church has one singular object. It is not there just to make people nice or to make society more comfortable. Its one purpose is to draw men into Christ, to make them little Christs.
Little Christ.
Which is the literal meaning of the word Christian. And Lewis says if the church is not doing this, if it is not actively turning eggs into birds, then all the cathedrals, all the missions, all the sermons, and even the Bible itself are a complete waste of time.
Wow. That's a staggering statement to say even the Bible is a waste of time if it doesn't lead to this transformation.
Because God became man for no other purpose. The incarnation wasn't an academic exercise or a philosophical statement. It was a rescue mission to create these little Christs. If the medicine isn't actually curing the patient, then the bottle and the label are useless. We're not just meant to read the menu. We're meant to eat the meal.
And Lewis pushes this idea even further. He says the entire universe was made for this purpose.
He goes to the cosmic scope. The Bible says that the whole universe was made for Christ. And then Lewis starts to speculate a bit, and he's very clear that it's just a guess about how the rest of nature fits into this grand plan.
He talks about animals, doesn't he?
He does. He notes that, we have no idea about life on other planets millions of miles away. But here on Earth, we can see how the higher animals, like our dogs or cats, are drawn up into man.
Through love, right. My dog becomes more than just a wild animal because he's in a relationship with me. He becomes nearly human in some of his habits and his affections. He gets a little bit civilized.
And even dead things and plants are drawn up into man when we study them or use them or appreciate their beauty. We elevate nature by interacting with it.
So the big speculation is that when man fully enters into Christ, when we are all finally hatched, we bring the rest of nature along with us. We're the bridge.
That's a guess. It's a beautiful, beautiful thought that we are, in a sense, the priests of creation. And when we are finally restored, the whole bad dream of the fallen world will be over. It will finally be morning. The whole of creation is groaning, waiting for the eggs to hatch. It's right there in Romans 8. The creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God.
So let's try to bring this all together. What does this mean for us right now? Let's summarize the key takeaways because we've covered a lot of ground.
I think the first thing is we have to realize that the Christian life isn't just a job or a special exercise we do on the side. It's the whole thing. You can't compartmentalize it.
Right. And the taxpayer method, trying to give God a slice of the pie while keeping the rest for ourselves, it only leads to misery.
Yeah.
It creates that grumbling, unhappy martyr who, as Lewis says, is worse than a selfish person. We have to stop trying to pay God off.
And second, total surrender is the only way forward. It's the only way to avoid the impossible, exhausting task of trying to be a good natural self. You simply cannot teach an egg to fly. It's not in its nature.
We must be plowed up, moving from grass to wheat. We must be hatched, moving from egg to bird. And that requires a death of the old self, a real death.
And while that surrender feels harder, feels more terrifying in the moment, like jumping off that cliff, it is actually the easier yoke in the long run. It's the only way that actually works because it's the only way that aligns us with reality as God created it.
I want to leave our listener with a thought to mull over for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week. Think about tomorrow morning. Think about that exact moment when the alarm rings and you wake up.
The wild animals.
Yes, the wild animals of your own wishes and hopes and fears rushing at you. The anxiety of the day, the to-do list.
It really is a battleground, that first moment.
And the question is this: are you going to spend your day trying to teach an egg to fly? Are you going to try and wrestle those animals into submission with your own willpower, which is the hard, impossible way? Or are you willing to crack the shell? Are you willing to do that first hard job of shoving them back and letting that larger, stronger, quieter life come in and take over?
That really is the daily question. The shell feels safe, but it's a tomb if you stay in it too long. The only way out is through the breaking.
Thank you for listening to Reformed Thinking. We hope this deep dive helps you with the wild animals of your own week.
Until next time.